Disclaimer for this episode. If I am breathing heavy, it is because I am going to give birth to a baby boy in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
She means not if, she is breathing heavy throughout this whole episode. I just told her she was breathing heavy into the mic. Oh my God.
Pregnancy disclaimer.
Yeah, right.
Whew, maybe I'll get one big breath before we start talking. Just maybe like, whew.
What's up, everyone? I'm Liz Hunt.
And I'm Chelsea Poppens.
And you are listening to the Agency Rocket Show. This is the show where we talk about the chaos of running our very own creative agency.
Woo! And we are in our website series. We just locked up the processes we talked about in our last episode, the dev presentation and launch items, post-launch items. And today we will be talking about website red flags and why it might be time for a rebuild.
So, whenever it comes to red flags, I would say, like, one red flag that I always feel is number one priority is if your website just looks terrible.
From a designer's initial look at a website, you're like,
ugh. If I look at it and I'm like, ew.
Gross.
Ew. And I think you need a redesign.
Yeah.
Okay, but for real, big time red flag if you are looking at your website and you're realizing that what you are putting out in like the world of your new marketing materials and some of your new print materials or most recent updated marketing messaging or new services or the tone, maybe even your audience has changed. You've made some changes in the look and feel of your current branding. That's probably a good time to update to a new website.
Especially for businesses that just opened up or like a couple years ago, a lot can change in those first few years. And a lot of times when small businesses are starting up, they're just getting scrappy and getting everything up and going. And then a couple years down the road, you realize your quality, like you said, your voice, your tone, the things throughout your social media and everything else doesn't always align. And just like Liz said, that is the perfect time to actually be able to spend some money on rebuilding a website that actually matches where you're at in the present moment rather than where you were at from the beginning.
That's actually a really good point. You know, something that I typically recommend to startups if they come to us. I don't love working with startups, and it's really simply because of this matter. They change directions for what they offer for their audiences, their services, their products. They change so rapidly, so often that I honestly feel bad when we charge them and then a year later they have to do a complete rebrand or they have to do a complete overhaul of the website. A lot of times what happens with startups is just exactly that. They have to completely redo everything, all of their marketing, all their branding, their voice, their whatever. And so a lot of times, like with startups, what I would typically steer them towards is instead of spending a lot of money on a brand or a lot of money on a website and things like that, is I would try to spend less on that. Maybe have the old do-it-yourself type of thing if you can, especially for a website. For branding, I think that you should probably hire a designer because I'm such a big, having a strong brand is very important. But when it comes to like all the ancillary pieces that go along with a brand, I think it's great if you just put in the, good old,
Good old college try.
Yeah, do it yourself type of thing to get you through it. Because like with startups, it's just things change so quickly.
It really depends on the size of the startup too, because if you have investors and you have the funds to do it, like, yeah, you'll still change, but like you have that money
Yeah.
bucket to do it. But a lot of the times what we get is like smaller businesses that are just starting
Yeah.
up. They're still developing their identity, like Liz said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
They have a total of 10 grand to spend for their
yeah,
entire company. And
get
I'm like,
scrappy with
okay.
it.
I'm like, okay, I would feel terrible taking all 10 of that to just build you a tiny piece of something.
How
No.
can we make your money stretch?
And yeah, so like maybe don't hire us.
Yeah.
Like, because just because it's like, I mean, I would take all of that and then some it would take all of that and then some to
Yeah, and that's
get
perfect.
you off the ground.
That's a perfect example too, that like our creative agency is not for everybody. And
Yeah.
we're not marketing ourselves as for everybody either, because on
Yeah.
intentionally,
Yeah.
because what we want to do and what we pride ourselves in is a little more of that VIP, like high level experience with
Yeah.
website builds, custom coding,
Yeah.
development, curated specifically for our clients, the small
Yeah.
businesses that come to work with us. And if
Yeah.
you are a small business with a small budget, or just somebody starting out with a small budget, an agency is probably not it for you. Find a
Yeah.
freelancer, find a designer that does it on the side,
Yeah.
and use them with referrals, because there's a lot of bad designers out there too. Find
Yeah.
something that fits your budget.
Yeah. Okay, so I got us super derailed. I'm so sorry. Anyway, back to established companies and figuring out if you need to actually redo your website. If your website it's not reflecting your current brand and the work that you're doing with the brand that you have now, such as messaging and marketing materials, and maybe you have done an actual rebrand of your logo identity and things like that, then it probably is time
Mhm.
to do an actual rebuild of your website so that it follows in line with what it is that you're doing in all other avenues
Mhm.
of your marketing
Yeah.
processes.
Yeah. And a second red flag, as we kind of look into what kind of directs us into that rebuild, is like outdated or hard to use technology. Sometimes
Yeah.
your website, if it was built a long time ago, and sometimes we'll get people that come to us and ask us, be like, hey, can you take a look at our website? And we're like, hey, can you give us access to the back end? And it's like going to your grandmother's garage sometimes, and it's it's gross. Things are unorganized, especially on some people's WordPress websites, where
Yeah.
there's so many different plugins that people might have on there that are outdated and broken. I realized how blessed we are to have a developer that is so organized and amazing. Cameron, shout out to you, we love you.
Yeah.
And Caleb too. When you have a good website backend that is very easy to navigate, very easy for the client to step into and make updates, and everything's very clear and straightforward. And then you get into a website
Mm-hmm.
where it's cluttered and broken down, you realize like it is time for an upgrade. It's time for a rebuild,
Yeah.
and to have pay somebody to do that. And so that would be the other red flag that I say, is when it's
Yeah.
time, when the technology doesn't match.
Maybe your website isn't working on every screen
Hmm.
well. It's not optimized to a phone, or it's not optimized to a tablet. Even today, I see websites that are not optimized to my phone or not optimized to my tablet. And it is,
It's
I'm like still
heartbreaking.
I'm like still kind of astounded that that is a thing, because
Like,
we've
let
been
me help
building,
you.
yes, we've been building responsive websites. It feels like we've been doing it for like 20 years. I'm sure it's not been that long, but like we've been doing it for so long. I'm just like, my goodness.
Yeah.
Like, come on,
And
people.
when 60% or more people are going to find your website through their mobile phone, their tablet, whatever
Yeah.
device they have, that's the day and
Yeah.
age we are in. People are searching on
Yeah.
their phones more than they are their desktops typically.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
the mobile responsive piece is so important, with all these different
Mm-hmm.
changes that are coming out with like Google AI and all these other
Yeah.
optimizations coming out this year, and moving forward. There's so much more that we need to do to make sure that a website is good and proper.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that can really mess up your users, as far as like not having good technology, is if your website doesn't load really quickly. So if you're noticing that, if users are noticing that, if then that is really going to upset people. And I know that sometimes we like to say that we live in an instant gratification um, generation and world. But the thing is if your website is not loading very quickly, people are going to leave and they're not
Hmm.
going to spend any time waiting for your website to load. And so that is you must get your website rebuilt immediately if your website is slow to load on any of your content. That is an immediate, people are going to leave right away.
Yeah.
So that's like an urgent get your website redone for sure.
Yeah, that's a cue to also work with an expert because it can get very technical when you talk about page speed, load speed, and it can be
Mm-hmm.
dependent on the platform that you're using. It can be dependent on like a lot of different variables from image sizes that are uploaded to your website to where your video, if there's a background video playing, is
Hosted.
where it's
Yeah.
hosted, how much is of those files are I call them heavy because in my mind that makes sense. Heavy files on your website that lead to slower load times. And when Google crawls that and it's a slow crawl and they can't crawl it easily and it's not very legible to it on the back end, on the code
Mm-hmm.
side of it,
Mm-hmm.
then it will decrease your ranking in the search engine. It is nice to bring in an expert who already has that in the back of their mind rather than educating yourself as a client and trying to figure that out on your own.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because even if people find your website and it's slow to load, they're going to leave. It's less likely that they will even find your website because Google will know that your page loads slow and they
Hmm.
will not even serve your website up on their search results because they're like, well, that site kind of sucks, so I'm not even going to tell people about it. You'll be lucky if people even find your website. Red flag number 3. So you know to get a rebuild.
Poor user experience. And
Mm.
Liz, you're very good at articulating this, especially in our client meetings. Can you, like, even when like just presenting our homepage to our full site design, can you give us an idea of like any specific moments where you're like, this is a terrible user experience? Like, just like as you're going through, is there any moments
Yeah.
that really stand out that you look for when you interact with the website for the first time?
Yes. So a lot of it boils down to how can we have a basic understanding of what people are coming to the website for and then get them there in the most simplified, easiest way possible. And so a lot of that has to do with thinking through what's called user flows and thinking through, okay, if this user is coming to the website for a specific service, how do we make it so easy for that person to find the service that they're after and then find information about the service and then contact us as soon as possible about the service that they want to hire us for. Putting together these flows throughout the website that are very simple for anyone to show up to the website to walk through and have specific points that we say, okay, this person is going to click here and then they're going to click here and then they're going to click here and then that is going to trigger this series of different things. That is really kind of what this user experience is meant to do. And some of it is just years of thinking about websites, like years of experience and expertise of just building these and understanding users and reading and research and all that kind of stuff, which is why people hire us because
Hmm.
we and I have that. And then some of it is just good old fashioned, empathy and understanding humans at a base level. Just thinking through things in a really simplistic fashion. Okay, if this person wants to find this, what's the easiest way that we can
Hmm.
set this up so that they find it right away? That's what we have to be doing whenever we're thinking about a website. And it's not just this button goes here, it's also thinking about content. So it's not just design, it's not just imagery, it's what content are we talking and saying while we're also showing them a button, that we're also showing them imagery and we're also showing interface
Yep.
type of elements and things like that. So it's like everything is kind of all combined into this full website.
And we take in the client's feedback too from like an analytical standpoint. If you have if you have a team that has kind of dug into that, if there's a high bounce rate, if people don't make it to that secondary page, if people don't make it to your
Mhm.
services page, maybe because they can't find it, maybe
Yep.
because your website isn't mobile friendly. And so they only get to the homepage and then they leave because they don't
Mhm.
know how to navigate your website or they don't want to spend time figuring it out. And then sometimes even it's that contact form from the client. And they're like, they keep asking about this, but it's on the site. I don't know why they can't find it. Sometimes comments like that are signals for that poor user experience. And
Yeah.
the fact that they don't know what the point of your website is a red flag. That is the time to have an expert or a professional do it.
Because we can help understand, okay, the content needs to look like this, the user experience needs to be set up like this, because they're not able to find whatever it is that you are wanting them to find. When there is a poor user experience, you're going to notice right away, because you're not going to be getting people filling out your forms, and you're not going to be getting phone calls, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be getting any leads from the website, or
Your
that
website's not converting.
yes, it's not converting, it's not, doing what your goal is for it, whatever it's meant to be doing, it's not doing that. And so that's how you know, like, we clearly have a poor user experience because it's not aligning with the goal that we have for it. That's what I would recommend, is rebuild.
Yeah. Sorry, Kona's being like extra loud and hey, he's like
Cool. No.
he's like shaking his head and being making all these noises and I forgot to lock him out of the room.
Does he do that
But
a lot? Shake his head and make all his noises?
uh so he's got the floppy ears, so sometimes he gets a little ear infection. But he's also
Oh,
just a very needy boy now that I'm pregnant
yeah.
and he wants all the attention. So
Yeah.
so ignore him if you're hearing him in the background.
Okay. I feel like sometimes animals know when, like, you're gonna
You're
go into
busy?
labor. No,
I was like,
gonna
just
go
like
into
kids.
labor. Well, yes, that for sure.
Yeah, I will say Captain and Kona have been exceptionally. I'm not going into labor anytime soon. They said it's only a 6 pound baby right now, so I feel like I got a couple weeks. I'm a big
Uh-huh.
girl. Ryan's a big boy. I think we got some time. But back to our red flags for website
Okay.
rebuilds. What would you say is a red flag number 4?
We kind of touched on it earlier, but I would say another one is if it is not mobile friendly. But then also, on top of that, if it's not ADA compliant, so it's not accessible to anyone who has any sort of disability at all when it comes to viewing a website.
Mm-hmm.
So mobile friendly, we can tackle that one first. The mobile friendliness is if your website can be viewed on a phone and basically everything is zoomed in, it's easy to read, you can swipe through images, that there are specific things that a website builder will do that makes it optimized for a mobile or tablet screen, then those things are very, very key for a website. If you don't have them, you definitely need a rebuild, because, like Chelsea mentioned earlier, most people are viewing websites or viewing everything on their phone.
And Google is putting extra emphasis on that in
Yes.
2025 as far as the mobile friendliness, as far as the accessibility when people get to your
Mm-hmm.
website. Google puts extra emphasis on it. And now that we
Yeah.
have AI, like the standards are much higher than they once were
Yeah.
previous years. So we're kind of in this day and age where a lot of the boxes need to be checked in order for Google to be ranking you high
Yeah.
in the rankings and the search engines.
Some of the things that you can do for accessibility, one of the best things you can do is add a widget that's called Accessibility. And this works for WordPress. It also works for Webflow. They have a widget for both. It does cost a few dollars a month. What it does is anyone who has any sort of disability when viewing a website, it has all kinds of ADA types of helpful
Yep.
things. So, like, for example, one of the things you can do with it is if you click the little guy, there's a way that you can tell it to turn the entire website to black and white. And so, someone who maybe is colorblind or has issues with seeing varying colors, then they can click and make the entire website black and white, and it will take care of all of those things for them. There's even things where it will just help pronounce the contrasts in colors a little bit more. So there's lots of different things that Accessibility does and has. And so I would highly recommend utilizing that tool. Otherwise, if you don't want to use actual widget to input, then I would say make sure that you're using a lot of contrast in your colors. Make sure that your typography is large and easy to read. Make sure that you are adding descriptions to all of your images.
I think also from the addition of chat boxes and AI, that kind of goes hand in hand with that user experience too, is
Mm-hmm.
are people able to get the answers that they want fast? And
Yeah.
if you do a chat box right, it can work in your favor. Obviously, there's people who don't want to talk to a robot, but if it's easy answers, like we working with an apartment management company or a property management company, and they have the answers for different properties that are available or pricings or scheduling an appointment, those type of chat boxes are really useful and really nice when you go searching for a space and you don't know
Yeah.
what exactly to look for. There's a bunch of platforms out there that will make that very easy, but you do have to train those type of models, so it is an extra
Yes.
lift. But there's
Yeah.
different ways to make that user experience kind of like a cherry on top moment for whoever is coming to your website.
Those are great tools.
Mm-hmm.
Red flag number 5 for the website.
Okay. All right. I would say we already kind of talked about the converting measure. If you're not getting leads, you're not getting calls or whatever the goal of your website is. But I think the other one is like if it is always a pain to update your website, that is a red flag. If it's a small edit, it's very hard for the client to go in and do that. That is an issue because you should be able to go in and edit like a little bit of content or change up
A
some of the
photo.
footer. Yeah, a photo, or it shouldn't take a developer every single time. And so like one of the things when we build specifically on WordPress is we always give our client access to the back end. And the back end, when they get to it, is very easy to navigate. We send tutorial videos on how to do that, how to update media, how to update pages, product pages, services, and then kind of show them the different areas within the back end that they can update that content and stuff. And it is very easy once they get the hang of it. And we have our clients say 10 out of 10 like amazing things about being able to hop in and do that. If your website is not easy to do that and you don't know how to do it, that might be time for a refresh or rebuild.
Yeah. One thing is we give clients editing access. We don't ever give them admin access because that is a great way to see your website die or break.
Downfall.
Yes. Yes. So we only give them editing access, which allows them to almost always do everything that it is that they need. If it comes to something that, hey, there is something on the site that we don't have access to or we need edited and changed, usually it's something that is under the scope of our hosting agreement that we have with clients. And then if it's not, then we simply set up a new statement of work. Hey, we did a whole nother web page or something. But adding in images to a carousel that's already been placed on the page, of course a client can change something like that,
I think a good
So-
example of maybe someone that didn't build with us is when even just feedback we've heard from other people is when you have a website that was built with Elementor. I am not a big fan of Elementor. It is clunky. It is hard. It doesn't always match your brand, and it's hard for it to match your brand. We have people that will come to us and be like, just start talking crap about Elementor. But when they have access to our custom website and back end, they're like, I will never go back. And it's really nice to hear that because then you really get to the point of like why people appreciate a custom builder who knows what they're doing and makes that customer journey and that user experience after launch that's going to last years, not just in that moment.
Because in the same way that we build the front facing side of the website custom to the client, we also make the back end side of the website custom to the client. All of the fields are specific to, hey, this is where you put your page title. Hey, this is where you put your team title. This is where you put your about. section. This is where, like all the things, all the pieces and parts of the front part of the page, they perfectly align with what's on the back end so that it's very easy for them.
Yeah.
And other pre-built things like Elementor or Divi, they don't have that same type of customization to it.
And then lastly, I would say we kind of talked about it already, but if your site isn't performing in the Google search engine or any of the other
Yeah.
search engines that are out there, AI is changing the way people are searching for businesses and services through
Yeah.
ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. That might be a sign that you need to rebuild. And the piece of that is it can get very technical when you rebuild a website, not just anybody, and anybody can do it, but not everybody
Mm-hmm.
can do it well. And that comes to
Yeah.
that goes down to the site architecture, to the way you label titles, to the way you label paragraphs, to all image text, meta descriptions, like very technical stuff that, like, I know these are like buzzwords if you're not in this world, but that is why you hire an expert to build a quality website that's actually Google is actually going to love. They're going to rank you
Yeah.
higher, and then you'll be able to actually compete against other businesses in your area that have offered maybe the same services. That kind of goes hand in hand is the analytics side of it, especially more and
Yeah.
more businesses I think are going to see that moving forward with AI and the way people are searching for things. And I know earlier Google launched Google AI earlier this year, and it tanked a lot of people's like search
SEO.
rank. Yep. Local map
Mm-hmm.
rankings, and people saw that take a hit, and they are rebounding, but it is going to be ever evolving. And so finding different ways to make your site, your business, your social platform all stand out is going to be super important moving forward.
If your search rankings are not good, you should probably consider doing a
Hiring
rebuild.
us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about when should they think about not rebuilding? Like, what if they just need some refresh?
I think a lot of that comes down to when it's mostly like content changes or maybe like a little block section section update, images,
Mm-hmm.
content, maybe adding like another service. Sometimes it doesn't, like
Yeah,
the look, the feel, the user experience is all fine. It's just
yeah,
lacking either strong call to actions or that movement. And that's where we
yeah,
can come in and be like, it's actually a pretty good website. It just could use this like restructure of the flow of the website
yeah,
or different things. And we can come in with those recommendations. And that's just more of a refresh. And we've had clients that we've built websites for, and then 5 years later, they come back and they're like, the website is timeless. They still love it, which
yeah,
is exactly
yeah,
how we build it and
yeah,
why we build it that way. And they're like, I just would like to update certain areas because my services have changed or different things have changed about that business. And then that's
yeah,
where we can step
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. So you should redo your site if it's ugly. If it doesn't follow,
If it
like,
looks gross.
I mean, but for real though, people are not gonna stick around your website if it's ugly.
We like pretty
Um,
things.
pres- I mean, humans are emotional beings. If
So,
it's ugly, they're not gonna want to hang out.
someone recently showed me a website, and obviously I compared to our websites, and I was like, well, it's a website. You spent 50K for that, and it's a website. It doesn't look pretty.
Woo!
The images aren't, it's nothing special. There's no zazz, but you did spend a pretty penny on it, so I feel like you should have worked with us.
Yeah, that's what really sucks is when you hear like how much somebody spent a lot of money
And they're
on
kind of
something and
embarrassed
it's
about it.
yeah, and then you see like what they got and you're like, "Oh,
Ooh.
whoa. Yeah, you should have hired us. We would
Hmm.
have done you right. Okay, so rebuild if it's ugly, if it doesn't work well on the back end, if it's not keeping up to date with your current brand and your current messaging, your current visual identity elements, things like that. If you are not ranking in Google search results, that's probably a good reason to rebuild. If you're not on mobile, if you're not ADA compliant, that's probably a good reason
Hmm.
to at least consider some major overhauls depending on kind of what your site is.
I think if you're a client listening to this or a business owner listening to this, I think also just taking a look at your website from an unbiased perspective. If you are a customer getting to your website, what's your goal? Like, what would you want to do? And then kind of coming
Yeah.
from a blank slate, like what makes the most sense, or analyzing some of your
Yeah.
competitor websites is a good way to look at it too. And not just in your area, maybe branch out to a different city and
Hmm.
see like, oh, that makes sense. Like I like that
Hmm.
about that website. And then you can kind of see some of the areas that are lacking, some pain points that maybe you didn't realize before.
And then make sure it's converting. If you're not getting leads, if you're not getting phone calls, maybe you should consider a rebuild.
Woo. Well, that is the end of this episode. If you like it, please like, share, follow, and reach out to us if you have any feedback or questions.
Yeah.
Bye, bye, bye.